Welcome to the Freedive Cafe, episode 10 with Stefan Randig. My name is Donny, host of the Freedive Cafe. The Freedive Cafe is long-form interviews that get into the backstories, the training, the challenges, the passions and fears and personal philosophies of the merry band of breath holders known as freedivers. The Freedive Cafe can be found at freedivecafé.com. All the episodes and show notes can be found there. Check out the Facebook page too and like it. So here we are, episode 10. I want to say that I can't believe how well things have worked out. The show has been extremely well received and the listener base grows on a daily basis. First of all, thanks to everybody who has been in touch and offered their suggestions and kind words. Thanks also to the growing tribe of Patreon supporters who throw me a few dollars each month. And just thanks everybody for listening. The Freedive Cafe is here to stay and there are tons of guests lined up for the coming months. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the show and make sure you don't miss an episode. On to today's guest. Stefan Randig was born in Germany but spent a lot of his childhood living on the islands of the Seychelles. In 2006, he moved to Dahab, Egypt to teach scuba. He eventually became an AIDA instructor at Freedive Dahab, and since 2012 he's been living in the Philippines, where he co-founded his school, Freedive Panglao. He became an AIDA Instructor Trainer in 2015, and since then has focused mainly on teaching instructor courses and coaching divers of all levels. Stefan is also an active competitor in major freediving competitions and has set 10 German national records, I think, in all 3 depth disciplines. I think it's 10 now because I believe he has broken another depth record with a 100-meter dive since the interview has been recorded. Stefan's episodes and show notes can be found at freedivecafé.com. If you have any thoughts or comments about what we discussed in this episode, feel free to leave comments there. Okay guys, let's dive. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show, Stefan.
Thank you.
You are originally from Germany, right?
Yes. So I spent most of my childhood in the south of Germany, around the Lake of Constance. Actually moving forth and back to the Seychelles as well, where my mother lives. So yeah.
Did you start freediving in Germany?
No, actually I have no diving experience in Germany, thank God. So I have no real experience in cold water or dark water.
You didn't have to do any of that, like
No.
lake diving and stuff like that?
No, actually I started freediving in Egypt, in Dahab. I think that's where a lot of freedivers started. So I was always blessed with very warm waters and
Yeah. So how about you tell us a little bit about how you came from being in Germany and how you eventually found your first freediving experience or your first course?
Well, actually, so I visited Dahab, and it was supposed to be a short trip to visit some friends. And while I was in Dahab, I started scuba diving. And then this was supposed to be a 1-month trip, and ended up being 3 years. So I got stuck in Dahab, and then became a scuba instructor there, and started working. So I was teaching scuba back in Dahab, and then at that time there were already a lot of freedivers in Dahab, and I would always see the freedivers in the blue hole when I had my customers, when I took them scuba diving. And I always thought it looks very impressive, it looks very graceful. And then at some point, I was teaching scuba, and I reached that point where in scuba diving where there's no more real challenge and it becomes like a job, you go to dive every day. And so I was looking for a challenge and something new, and then I thought, okay, I'll give freediving a try. And then that was the start of it.
Mm-hmm. And who did you do your first courses with?
I started at Freedive Dahab with Linda Paganelli and Lotta Eriksson. Those were my first courses.
It's funny, I was just talking to Sarah Campbell a couple of days ago, and she also started with those two.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Quite common.
Yes. So but then still teaching scuba, and then freediving was really just like a hobby, in my spare time. And then became more and more important, and at some point it became a bit difficult to combine the scuba, like the work and my freedive training, because I couldn't freedive after scuba. So most of my freedive training was happening like early morning, and then scuba diving afterwards.
So when you first started freediving, what was it very easy for you, or was it a difficult start for you? Did you find something particularly difficult? Was there any challenges that you had to overcome?
I think the start was quite easy because I knew already how to equalize from scuba diving and was comfortable in the water. So I think I had quite an easy start, and I think I progressed quite quickly. I would say down to like the mid-20s, 25 to 30 meters. Took me like just a few months, but then I stayed at that depth range for a very long time. I remember I plateaued at like in the 30s I stayed there for almost 3 years.
That's crazy. I mean, I think a lot of people would give up at that point if they were looking to.
Yeah, it was also mainly because I took my first courses, and then I had this phase of really fast progress, and it was a lot of fun. And then I moved from Dahab, I moved to the Maldives, again for teaching scuba. And so I was in the Maldives for 2 years, and there I wanted to keep freediving, but I had no instructors. I had dive buddies, but they were like my level. So that was that was the time where I was really stuck. But I think, like looking back, I think it was a really important time. I think that depth range, like the 30s, 30 to 40, when you're getting closer to your RV and equalization becomes a bit trickier. I think that struggle to actually get stuck there and work it out, that is, I think, quite an important part of progressing. Because you learn so much, like you gain so much awareness, and help you to become a better freediver eventually. But yeah, it takes patience.
Yeah. I mean, I was quite similar too. I was kind of stuck around there for a long time. But I think it's actually really valuable. I think it's almost a bit like, you know how you have like a base camp for Mount Everest, and you need to go to the base camp first, and you have to stay there for a few days so that you can acclimatize. Exactly. If you have that, if you do get stuck around 30 meters and you spend a year or even several years there, then at least you really adapt to that depth very well, and it's a good place to then progress from.
Yeah, no, I was in the Maldives, and then I was diving that depth for all that time, and then I thought, okay, if ever I'll find an instructor and I learn how to mouth fill, and then I'll just go. Everything would be super easy. And then when I left the Maldives, I visited Michael Board in Indonesia.
Yeah. Did you go to Freedive Gili?
Exactly. Yeah. So it was actually just shortly after he set up his school there, and it was so nice to be there. And he was like one of the first instructors to kind of introduce me to the mouthfeel, and I tried to learn it from the internet, but then made a lot of mistakes. And then so he was the first one to really teach it to me properly. And then I had a little bit of a jump. So I had some progress there, but then got stuck again. So like my progress in freediving was never really nice and gradual, but it was always like you get stuck, and then you work on something, you find something out, and then you progress, and then you get stuck again. Like more like steps,
Yeah, that's a nice place to learn anything. Freedive Gili, isn't it?
Yeah. It was very nice. Yeah,
I did my first course there actually, so it's close to my heart. You've been competing in freediving since 2010. How did you get into competition?
Actually, when I started freediving, or when I was progressing a bit further, I was never really interested in competing so much. And I don't know, it kind of happened because I was in Dahab, and then at some point I started working. I started teaching freediving at Freedive Dahab, so automatically I was involved in competition. So I was doing some safety, and then I thought, okay, I might just as well take the opportunity to do a dive in competition. And then I really liked the experience because the atmosphere in competition was never really very competitive. It was really just like a couple of freedivers getting together and diving, and everyone is trying to do a good dive, and like who does the deepest dive, or it didn't really matter. So I really liked the experience. There was a lot of sharing of information and training techniques. Yeah.
And are you still competing now?
Yes. So actually, I had a little bit of a break because I moved here to the Philippines, and the last 3-4 years I was really busy setting up the shop here. And now since last year, I'm trying to get more free time again, and my goal is to be able to travel a little bit more again and start competing. Yeah.
So, according to your bio, you've set national records in all the depth disciplines. How did this become possible for you?
I was when I was in Dahab, I was diving with a mask, and like my goal was always to. I always wanted to dive with a mask, so I never switched to the nose clip. So I went quite far with the mask. I think I went like 70 something, and then I got stuck there because of equalization, of course. And then I switched to no fins because I couldn't get any further with my mouth fill. So I kind of went through all the disciplines. You know, I did like a constant weighted free immersion in the 70s, and then I switched to no fins, and I got to like 60. So actually, I ended up doing more or less always like all of the 3 disciplines. Yeah, and then at that time, it was back in 2010. The national records in Germany for depth were not so they were not so deep. So it was actually not so difficult.
Before a competition, what kind of preparation do you do, if any? I try to be quite careful with the timing of my training, because it's a mistake that I've done in the past quite a few times, where I would sign up for a competition and get really motivated and train too much, and by the time I get to the competition I'm already overtrained. So I try to take it easy before a competition, and try to schedule training so that I'm basically at my peak when the competition time comes. But I would say probably like a deep dive every 2-3 days, maybe not too much, some pool. It depends what kind of competition it is. I was at Vertical Blue this year, and I made the mistake of training 1 month here in the Philippines, and then I had another 3 weeks of training in the Bahamas. So it was in total almost 2 months of deep diving, and it was just too much. And then when Vertical Blue started, I was just like, okay, just want to get this over with. I kind of lost motivation already. So yeah. So I think the timing is quite crucial, like to not do too much, get enough rest and recovery, and at least you can learn from that mistake.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just, a lot of people told me, when you go to Bahamas, make sure you go early. It's the first time. Make sure you have enough time there to get used to the darkness in the blue hole and everything. So that's why I went quite early, because I thought I'm used to diving here in blue waters, and it's probably going to take me quite a while to get used to the darkness. And I did the first dive there, and it was totally fine. Like it was not an issue at all.
So you live in Panglao now, and you're quite busy with teaching at the school. But do you have enough time still to train for yourself, or is it an issue because you're so busy with the school?
It's getting better. Like, of course, it's difficult to combine teaching and training, but I'm trying to keep a certain level, with depth.
Just maintain your level.
Exactly. So I'm over the year, I'm usually trying to keep my adaptation at like 70 to 80 meters, so that if I have free time, I can basically start from there and progress deeper. But yeah, it's working out quite well. I'm usually doing like around 10 deep dives a month. So yeah, and we have the pool here, so I'm usually doing a little bit of static dynamic as well.
What is your favorite discipline?
My favorite discipline, it used to be free immersion. I really like free immersion. It's probably the least technical, and it's just very easy, the most relaxing. I like static as well. I think it goes very well together with free immersion because of the longer dive times. So I like static, I like free immersion. At the moment, I'm working more on constant weight. It was always something that I didn't like so much. But I'm getting more comfortable with it now. I would say in general, I really like the depth disciplines.
Yeah, it's funny how many people tell me that they love free immersion because, if you look at if you look at Facebook or Instagram, you never really see anyone doing free immersion, right? It's always like constant weight or no fins. But then you speak to the freedivers and everyone's just like, yeah, it's so enjoyable. Do you do any kind of like additional training for your freediving, like strength training or yoga or something like this? Is there something that you do to supplement the actual diving?
Actually, I would consider myself a quite lazy freediver. I don't do too much apart from the actual deep dives. I used to go to the gym, do some strength training, but then I noticed that it never really made much difference in my diving, and because I'm quite busy with teaching, I always feel like that gives me enough of a workout, So if I have a free day, I usually just take that to relax and recover, and of course stretching. I do a lot of stretching, but I think it always depends a little bit on like what is holding you back at depth, and at the moment I'm more limited by just finding time to train. So as long as there is no real physical issue, I think I'll just stick with doing a deep dive from time to time. Yeah.
In your progression, like eventually you started to progress into the higher numbers, and being a top competition freediver. Did you experience any issues with things like lung squeezies or trachea squeezies, anything like this? Yeah,
I had this phase in my progression, and it was in the 50s and 60s, and that depth range where I started to have some issues with small, like trachea or upper airway squeezes, like nothing very serious, but just annoying. You have this little bit of blood. But at that time I was still diving with a mask, so I think that was like one of the main issues, because I would have this, I would get to the limit with my mouth fill, and I would have this negative pressure building up in the mask, and I think that caused a lot of stress. So when I switched to the nose clip, then that was all gone, and since then I don't have any more issues.
So you think that inability to equalize your mask when you're using the mouth fill could be a factor towards trachea squeezes?
I think that a tight mask, it can just build up a lot of stress, and that in turn can cause tension, and we know that tension it can be one of the factors to cause a squeeze. So I think being comfortable at the deep part of your dive is very, very important.
I mean, you must see, I know the Freedive Panglao is a very popular freediving school. So many people that I know from Taiwan go to your school or pass by that way. You see a lot of students. What do you think are the biggest mistakes that beginning freedivers make? And what advice would you give to people starting out in the sport?
It's actually interesting for me moving to Asia, because I was in Egypt before. We got mostly European freedivers. Now being here in Asia, I came here 5 years ago, and freediving in China and Korea mainly was very new. I was just starting, and we really got the impression that the freediving community in Asia is really trying to push very hard to kind of catch up with the rest of the world. A lot of the students that come here for training or for courses have quite a competitive mindset, and I think that it can be a little bit of a problem, especially, you know, like we just mentioned before, you have usually when you start freediving, you have this time when you really progress quickly, and then a lot of divers think that, okay, I can just keep going like this. I will just I went from 0 to 20 meters in a week, so okay, in a month I'll be at 50, but it just doesn't work like that. And I think a lot of like that new generation of freedivers just need to I think an important skill is patience, and just slow down and take it easy. It sounds like a cliche, but I mean, it's really important to enjoy yourself and not take this too seriously, you know.
Yeah, and also to get to get the best instruction that you can, right? To get the best teachers, because I've also noticed this in Taiwan, that there's sometimes I go to where I usually dive, and there's a lot of people in the water who are free diving, but I know almost all of them don't have any kind of certification, and I see them doing some pretty crazy stuff, you know. So it seems it's only a matter of time before somebody gets hurt. So the value of good instructors being available to people is quite important as well, I think.
Yeah. Especially now with social media and videos everywhere, and you see what other people do, and then it's difficult because people they see that and it looks nice and it looks easy, and they want to do the same, and you know.
Yeah, well, that's actually like a big part of the issue, I think, especially in Taiwan. You know, in this culture, there's a lot of like hero worship and emulation of what people see on social media, and actually, most of those divers that I see in the water probably would be too terrified to even go into water deeper than 15 meters. But what they really want to do is they want to get the GoPro in there, they want to get the shots, they want to get the pictures with the fancy fins.
Exactly.
Like, I see like half of these divers have like Molchanova fins and you know Setma composite fins, and I've never seen them in deep water, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, but I'm sure you would agree that free diving is kind of exploding here in Asia, right? Especially in our part of Asia.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you see it now when you look at international competitions. You have more and more Asian freedivers. Like this year at Vertical Blue, almost a third of the divers there were from Korea, China. I think that was the first time they had so many athletes there from the Asian region. So that's good.
So you, in 2012, you founded your freediving school in Panglao with Dong-ha Kim, who is a South Korean, right?
Yes.
So how did this come about? Hey guys, are you enjoying the show? Sorry to interrupt, but let me make a little call to action. The Freedive Cafe is free and always will be, but it's a lot of work. Post-production on an episode takes many hours, which I usually try to squeeze into the lunch breaks of my real-life day job. Not to mention the hours spent in correspondence with the world's top freedivers, preparing for episodes and actually doing them, sometimes at ungodly hours due to the time differences. Everything is done on a shoestring budget with the most basic of equipment, and I do everything myself. If you love the show, if you appreciate what I'm doing and want to see the show improve, and want to hear more episodes each month, you can do that by joining the Patreon tribe. If you don't know what Patreon is, you just go to the freedivecafe.com and click the support the podcast button. That will take you to Patreon, where you can choose to donate a few dollars to the show each month. Any amount is appreciated, and there are some goals and rewards too. For example, once I reach 35 patrons, I will start releasing 3 episodes a month instead of the regular 2. We're only 13 patrons away from making this happen, so head over to patreon.com/freedivecafe and join the tribe. If you don't join Patreon, don't worry, I still love you anyway, and the show will go on.
I was actually funny. We were in Dahab and we said, okay, my wife is Japanese and we wanted to move to Asia so that she would be closer to her family. And we said, okay, we'll move to Asia. And then I think in Asia, you have Thailand, you have Indonesia, and you have the Philippines. It's like the very common tourist destinations and freediving destinations. And in the beginning, everyone said, "Oh, you should go to Thailand. You're gonna be so busy. You have places like Koh Tao, and so many people want to learn." But I think what kept us from going to Thailand was just the limited depth there. Because I do this because I love freediving and I want to continue my own training. So the Gulf of Thailand is really shallow. Indonesia, I think it's a bit more seasonal. And the Philippines is actually, you have unlimited depth and you have so many islands. Everywhere is a little bit different, and you actually have the option to dive pretty much whole year round. So we decided to move to the Philippines. And when we arrived here in Panglao on the island, I think I was pretty much the first freediver here. There was a lot of scuba schools. No one really knew about freediving. And a few weeks after we arrived here, I got a message from DK, who's the Korean guy I'm working with now. At that time, he was in Egypt, in Dahab as well. He just finished his instructor course, and he said, "Oh, he's coming to Philippines. Maybe we could meet and do some training together." So we met here in Panglao, and then we decided to try and work together. And I'm really grateful for that, because there's no way I could have set all this up by myself. It's easier to share.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the situation that you have there, like where the school is located and what kind of facilities you have and the water?
So we are here on the island. Is a quite small island. So the really good thing here in Panglao is that we actually have the option to move around on the island with our, we have 3 different dive sites. So depending on wind direction and wind strength, we can usually always find a quite sheltered spot. And we have the center here on the south coast of the island. We have now we have a 25-meter pool here. We have our classrooms. We have a restaurant. And basically the way we dive is we go out by boat. It's a really short ride, we can get 100 meters within a 3-minute boat ride. And then the way we dive is drifting. So it's very similar to Gili Trawangan, if you've been there. So basically we drop the buoy, we make sure that we get enough depth, drop the buoy and let it drift with the whole setup, and the boat basically stays with us, follows us. Like this, the rope is always straight, and we're not really affected by the currents. That's probably one of the main problems, I think, in a lot of Asian countries, that you have issues with current. So drifting is quite a nice way to have a comfortable setup. And that's basically it. The best time for diving here is usually from May to September. You can dive whole year round, but for example now starts the typhoon season, so there can be a storm from time to time, which can mean that there's maybe one day where we cannot dive. But so most of most of the competitions we organize are usually May, June. July, those are the best months. There's very little wind, so flat surface, it's very warm. The water is 30 degrees. We don't have any thermoclines here, so we have, at the 100 meters, you still get like 29 degrees, which makes it really hard for us training here, visiting competitions in other countries.
Right, yeah.
Because basically it's colder almost everywhere in the world.
Yeah, but that's great that you do the drifting. I think it's like it's so comfortable to dive that way. And I was just in Mualboal at JP's place in the Philippines, and it's also got really amazing depth just right out the front of the shop. But man, I was so tired after that 2 weeks and fighting the current the whole time.
Actually, when I came here, I was not very familiar with drifting, because the way people dive in Dahab is also always attaching to a mooring buoy or to the reef or something. So like my idea of freediving was always like, okay, a buoy and the rope and then a fish line and you attach somewhere. So when I came here to the island, I was also basically diving exactly same way like Mualboal, like you would have the fixed lines at the drop off where the boats attach, and I would attach my buoy there and do my courses and my training. But then you're just really exposed to any current. And then it was actually Gili Trawangan where I saw that the first time, where Mike said, okay, we'll go out and we'll just it's like there's 200 meters of water here and we'll just drift. And it was a very strange feeling, but it works really well. You just need to make sure that you have enough depth. And then
it's especially, I think, quite a strange feeling for beginners and people who are not used to being in the water, because I mean, before I started free diving, like I was pretty scared of the water, to be honest. And when they take you out in that boat and they tell you to jump into the open ocean, and you can't see like anything beneath you or around you for kilometers and kilometers, it's quite intimidating, actually. But you get used to it pretty quickly, I guess.
I think that's the really nice thing if you dive in a place like Mualboal, that you have the option if you take a new freediver or you have a beginner course that you can actually be really close to the reef and they have something to see, and I think that makes up for the current. Here we go out by boat and we check who's the deepest diver on the boat today, and then there's someone doing 80, so that means we need to drive out far enough to have the rope safely at 80 meters, but that means that all the other divers on the boat, even AIDA 2 divers, beginners, they will be in very deep water. We don't tell them that we have 150 meters of water here, but we'll be out in the blue basically.
So when you do you also have nice reefs around the island too?
Yeah, so especially along the north coast, the water there is a bit more exposed, so it's a bit more, it might be a bit choppy, but the reef table is really short, so you don't need a boat, and there's some nice spots for snorkeling. The sad thing in the Philippines is that unfortunately there's a lot of fishing going on, and it's very rare to see something big, but there's a lot of small fishes. So we have turtles a lot, but it's very rare to see something like a shark or bigger fishes.
So will you do like how they do in at Gili Trawangan, maybe like go and do the drift diving for the depth, and then on the way back you might visit the reef and give the divers a chance to do some fun diving too?
Yeah, we do that sometimes, especially when we have divers, who struggle with equalization, and it's frustrating. And then if you just come back to the rope every day, they might lose motivation. So we try to squeeze in some time on the reef as well, just to just to remind them what this is all about,
So what's involved in the day-to-day running of the freediving school?
Actually, like now we have a really great team here. We're 11 instructors, and we really share all the work that we have. So basically, I come quite early. I come here to the shop at like 7 o'clock in the morning, prepare the buoys, prepare the ropes, who's diving with whom, buddy teams, and prepare the oxygen, and basically get ready for the first session. We have a session in the morning. There's usually some people doing pool sessions as well. We have people in the classroom for courses. Like what I really enjoy working here now is that we get really, at the moment, we get all kinds of levels. Like we have like introduction beginners who try for the first time, and at the moment we have Goran here who's doing like 100-meter plus dives every day, so and everything in between. So that makes it makes it a lot of fun to work, because you get all these different levels of freedivers.
So what about Panglao? I mean, what kind of place is Panglao to live in? Do you have good amenities? How's the food?
So actually, coming from like moving here from Dahab, it's definitely an upgrade. Like life is very nice here. Like, you know, generally being in Asia is really nice. People are really friendly. It's nice and green, and like infrastructure is good. We have a city close by with shopping malls where you can get everything you need. There's hospitals, so yeah, like I think that was one of the main things also why we left Dahab. I mean, Dahab is a fantastic spot for diving, but apart from that, it's basically sand and rocks.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a desert effectively, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Panglao isn't too far from the southern island of Mindanao. And the government is battling like a radical Islamic insurgency there right now. There have even been kidnappings or attempts to kidnap from Bohol, which is right next to Panglao. Has any of that affected your business, or does it worry you at all?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's scary if you see it on the news, but it always seems so far away. But then actually on a clear day, you can see Mindanao from here, and then you think, okay, this is like 200 kilometers away from here. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit scary because it's a bit uncertain how things will develop. We've had some cancellations. I think it was it last month or 2 months ago where things escalated a little bit there in Mindanao when they put up the ISIS flags and everything, and it was in the news. So I got like emails from people who book, who were like, yeah, I heard there's war in the Philippines. We'll come back when the war is over. I mean, it's super quiet here. We didn't really experience any of the like, I know there was a group of terrorists actually in Bohol that were captured, but yeah, like we experience it more through the news. There is a coast guard, like a military ship that is basically patrolling the southern coast of Panglao and Bohol, because it's basically the area that it's that strip of water that stands between Bohol and Mindanao. So, and there were like threats of Abu Sayyaf that they say they come with a boat and kidnap divers or something like that. So there's over the past months there was definitely much more like police and military presence and a lot of checkpoints, and like the government is definitely more careful because they're really relying on the tourism here, and if something happens that would be very bad. Probably
the danger is overestimated, right? But at the same time, you can never really be too careful.
It was the same back in Dahab, you know, like you're sitting, you're there on the beach, you're diving, everything is okay, and it's scarier for family and friends back at home in Europe who see all the horrible pictures on TV, and then when you're actually there, it's hard to understand, you know, why everyone is so worried, because it's really peaceful, you know.
Let's talk a little bit about equipment, Stefan. What kind of gear do you like to use?
Actually changed a little bit now being here in Asia. We try to find brands that are easy to get, and I used to use Helios wetsuits, and all the things from Europe are a little bit harder to get now with the shipping, and so like we're trying to find equipment brands from Asia. So now I'm really happy with double K wetsuits coming from Korea. It's great quality, and production times are super fast, and delivery is of course easy. I got a mulchon of Monofin, which I'm really, really happy about. It's one of the best I've had so far. Yeah, I think those are like the two pieces of equipment I'm really happy about.
I think pretty much every guest I've had on this show has talked about their Molchanov Monofin. So maybe I need to ask Alexei Molchanov if he can sponsor the podcast for me, because I'm sure he's going to sell so many of these Monofins now that everyone talks about them.
It's funny because I used to use I had a glide fin, and then I had a power fin, and then everyone starts using the Molchanov, and it was really like a hype, and I thought, no, like it can't be that much different. Good, yeah. And then I actually won the Monofin in a competition, and the pool competition was the prize that I got, and I thought, okay, that's nice. And then I got it, and I was really surprised. Like it actually is different. Like and then because it was free, I said, okay, I'll give it a try and order a really soft one. So I ordered a very soft blade, and I love it. It's like the best fin I've ever had.
Have you done much traveling around the world? Have you been to many different places to dive? What are your favorite places?
Not so much. I mean, Bahamas this year was probably the biggest trip in a long time. A little bit around Asia. I'm in Japan quite a lot because of my wife. Yeah, not as much traveling as I'd like to do.
What about places that you would? Which places would you like to visit? Where would you like to go?
Well, in general, I would just really like to visit the World Championships one day. That's one of my goals for the next year, because I've never been to a World Championships, so depending where it is. Honduras this year just seemed like very, very far from here, you know. I already had the trip to Bahamas this year, so let's see where it happens next year. And then I mean, Kalamata would be nice. I'd like to see Greece and the Mediterranean, but I'm a little bit intimidated by the cold and the thermoclines, and I'm not sure if I would do well there, you know.
Yeah, I used to. I spent quite a bit of time on Crete, on the south coast of Crete, and at the time I wasn't free diving, but I did do quite a bit of snorkeling around the coast there, and I think it's just one of the most beautiful places in the world. I think that the water was amazing, and I think the possibilities for diving there must be excellent too. So that's definitely on my radar at some point. What about? Have you ever been to Taiwan?
Not yet, actually. I have a few students. I had a few instructor candidates coming from Taiwan. So yeah, I'd definitely like to visit one day.
Yeah, we have some nice water here too in the south of Taiwan. We have a wonderful small coral island called Shaliocho, which is it's beautiful. It's also a sea turtle sanctuary, and that's my primary dive site, training site as well. You can get about 45 meters just off the shore there, so it's not a lot, but it's good enough for me. And we also have really nice kind of more like Southeast Asian style tropical beaches in the south with nice white sand. Not really got the depth, but I think the potential for developing freediving here is pretty huge, actually.
No, I did a few trips to Hong Kong, mainland China. I did a few courses there, but no, Taiwan not yet.
Well, if you ever decide to come, you're welcome to visit me, and you'll have a place to stay. So
that's nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you said before that there's because of overfishing and things like this, the ecology there is not so great. What do you think about the ecology in general in the Philippines, and do you see the same problems in Panglao that we see in other places with pollution and plastic waste and things like this?
It's funny that in the Philippines, I don't know, I think it's really, really different from island to island. Like we have some islands who have been here where they actually have laws against plastic. Like you go to a supermarket, they're not allowed to give you a plastic bag. They actually get fined if they give you any plastic bags. So they wrap everything in newspaper and like really aware of environment. And then in other places, there is less awareness. So here on the island, I would say it's quite clean. I mean, they're taking care because of the whole tourism, but I think the main problem is the fishing here, and it's a really difficult situation because on one hand they rely on tourism and scuba diving and on the reef, but on the other hand, the fishery here is something that has been. It was here before all the foreigners came and all the tourists came. So if you talk to the locals here, they say, yeah, we were here first and we have to fish and we have to eat. And it's really difficult because the fishermen here are really very, very poor. And it's difficult if you tell them that, okay, you let that fish grow and the reef will grow and that will benefit tourism and scuba diving. But they need to eat today, you know. So it's a very difficult situation. And it's quite sad if you go to the fish market here, you see like they basically take out everything. You see fishes of 3 centimeter size, like they take out whatever they can, you know, like and from what I heard, they know that this is not good for tomorrow, you know, like but they have no choice, you know.
What do you say about the islands that ban the plastic? I think this is a really good idea. Timothy Umagan was talking to me about that as well, and it seemed like it made a big difference to that particular local area. I think what it would take would be like, you know, a whole country would have to like implement something like this for it to really like take off and cascade around the world. But yeah. Maybe that's going to happen.
Yeah, hopefully.
So do you see free diving for yourself as like a spiritual pursuit, or is it more of a is it less spiritual?
It's difficult. I wouldn't consider myself a very spiritual person. Like for me, I think like you have these different types of freedivers. Like you have those like spiritual freedivers who say it's like all about the mind and meditation and visualization. Then you have more those who work on more like physical aspects and is more like athletics and training and physical training. And I think it's important to find like a balance in between. So I definitely use visualization and relaxation techniques in my training, but I think like good balance in between, I would say.
But you don't sit on the boat in the lotus position,
no,
meditating while you're driving out to the dive site, right?
No.
What about? Do you have a personal philosophy of happiness? You know, what do you think are the most important things in life?
That's difficult. I think important is that you do what you love. You know. I'm really grateful to be able to dive every day. Especially, I think for me, like getting into competition and deeper freediving, important is not to take all of this too serious and like having fun is the most important part. And I think. I don't really have a philosophy of happiness. I think important is that you do what you love, you know, and I think then you will automatically be good at it.
Yeah, it sounds like you that you're really doing what you love. So
yeah,
perhaps you don't have to think about it too much.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody who's sitting in the office in London during the winter time has to think more about a philosophy to keep them happy. You said you're quite a lazy person. Like, do you have like a morning ritual?
Yeah, actually, I have. Actually, I like my whole daily routine and lifestyle in general is quite consistent. Like my days look very similar. So I usually get up quite early. I get up like 5:30 and usually spend like half an hour in front of the TV watching news and just thinking about the day ahead. And then if I do a deep dive, I would do some stretching, usually not too much. I try to usually keep my stretching in the morning quite brief, so maybe like 15-20 minutes, a little bit of lung stretching. Then usually have a coffee in the morning with the family, and then at 7 o'clock usually I go to the dive center and prepare for the day. Yeah, that's usually my morning routine. The coffee is very important.
You said with your family, I know you have a wife, right? Satomi?
Yes, Satomi, and I have a daughter. She's 4 years.
Oh, 4 years old.
Exactly, yeah. She was actually born here on the island, and I bring her to school in the morning. That's also like part of my, like the start of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years old. That is a great age, man. But I teach kindergarten, you know, here in Taiwan. I teach 4-year-old kids every morning.
Okay.
And I probably see about 100 per day. And I can tell you, like, they're really great fun for 2 hours in the morning, but I don't want to take one home right now.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, it makes, I mean, I really love like being with family, and I love family life, but in times of training or competition, it definitely adds a little bit of challenge, you know, like to balance like family and work and then training, sometimes not so easy.
Has it ever concerned you that perhaps what you're doing for a living, or, you know, what you do in competition is potentially quite dangerous? Did that come to you in a new light since you had your daughter, or is that something that doesn't concern you? No, definitely. I mean, I'm definitely thinking about that a lot. And after she was born, definitely thinking about that a lot. Like, I thought about maybe stop competing, stop deep diving. But then, I mean, when she was born, I already did that for a while, and I always consider myself a very conservative diver. So yeah, I think I dive in a very careful way, and I don't see any reason why I have to push myself. So yeah, I'm just trying to enjoy the dive. So I'm definitely thinking about it, but yeah, I don't see any reason why I should stop. You know, I don't see that I'm taking any unnecessary risks. So, what are your plans for the future? Do you have any kind of big dreams or aspirations, or is it just going to be more of the same?
I mean, I think one of my big dreams was always to have a center or to have a school, and we're basically there now. So I'm really happy with the situation now, with the center here and the great team we have. We want to get better at organizing competitions. That's something that I enjoy very much, organizing competitions, bringing freedivers together, and it helps the development of the sport. So more competitions in the future, and yeah, like we said before, I hope to do more traveling. Like now, slowly the center runs on its own, so there should be more time for visiting competitions and traveling a bit more. Yeah. But I'm pretty much, I'm quite happy with where we are now with the center here. And yeah.
You say that you really like to organize competitions. Do you think that there's a place for really a world-class top-level competition in Asia, like on the kind of level of Vertical Blue? Could you see that happening at your place in Panglao?
We're thinking about that a lot, and we even had applications for World Championships. We have that in the back of our head, because we have been organizing competitions now for the past 3 years. I think in total we've had close to 15 competitions, and it goes well. And it can be really, really nice here. It can be perfect, can be flat water, zero current, 13-meter visibility, unlimited depth. But it's always risky, you know. You never know. There can be a storm, there can be current, there can be a bit of waves. So in the last years, we were just always very, very lucky with the competitions we had. But to organize like a very large scale event, it would just be a huge gamble, you know. Like, you can do your best to organize, and logistics and everything can be perfect, but in the end, the sea conditions, you never know. So I think we will get more deep divers. Like, even now, the small competitions we organize, we always, almost every time, we have divers going past 100. So we have the conditions, but the problem with a big competition is just that you need good conditions for a quite long time. You need like 4, 5, 6 hours of perfect conditions, and that is difficult because we have the current here, and in a competition we can't drift. Like, the platform is actually anchored, so again we're exposed to the current. So we go with tides, and then we have maybe like a 2-3 hour window where conditions are good, but that's not enough for a huge event, you know. So that's holding us back a little bit from going bigger with the competitions. Like, the biggest one we had now was the Asian Freediving Cup this year, and we had it was 42 divers, and again we were just like really, really lucky those 3 days. There was zero current, but it could have also been different. No, it would definitely be nice to have the World Champs in Asia one day. I remember when I started freediving, there was one time when they organized the World Champs in Okinawa in Japan. But I think they were also struggling with conditions, and there were competition days were postponed because of typhoon, and yeah. Now they have this. I don't know if you heard, they have this competition coming up in November in Indonesia. Apparently, they found a spot that is very deep and it is very sheltered, and there is no current and no waves. So it will be the first time.
It's in Indonesia. Is it the Australian Nationals?
It's it's in Banda Aceh, so it's quite a remote place, and it's the first time for them to organize this competition. So we'll see how it goes. But the way they described the setup and the conditions there, it sounds really good. So,
do you know the name of that competition?
I can send you the link on Facebook. They just opened the registration, I think, like yesterday, and it looks like a great event. So it's nice to see more competitions.
Especially the location sounds very interesting. So
yeah.
I'd like to hear more about that. Yeah. Do you have any interests outside of freediving? I'm pretty sure that you're a pretty busy guy, especially with a 4-year-old daughter. But is there anything else you'd like to do, like running, climbing, or writing books, something like that?
Not much, actually. It's mostly diving, actually, if I think about it.
That sounds pretty good, man. If I could just...
It's either pool or ocean. Yeah. No, and I'm not diving. I'm usually spending time with the family, and that's pretty much it at the moment. Yeah.
If I could have just only diving, I'd be a pretty happy camper too.
Yeah.
Right, Stefan, I just want to ask you one more question. I collect books, and I'm always really fascinated to find out what my guests like to read. Do you have a book that you'd like to recommend to the listeners and myself?
To be honest, I'm not a book person. I'm not reading much. So at the moment, at home, it's mostly books for 4-year-olds.
Like The Hungry Caterpillar, this kind of thing, right?
Exactly. So it's I'm actually I'm trying to learn Japanese. So I'm learning together with my daughter. We're studying Japanese children's books.
Well, I wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
So is your daughter speaking the local language in the Philippines as well?
Not really. In Philippines, everyone speaks very good English. So it's actually not easy to catch the local language, because everyone speaks good English, and compared to like places like Thailand or Indonesia, where like you kind of have to learn some phrases. In here it's really easy, like even old people speak good English. So my daughter actually at school, everything's in English, and she speaks Japanese to Satomi, and I speak German to her. She usually answers in English. So yeah.
But she's gonna have a pretty good linguistic toolbox by the time she grows up then, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer the questions and talk about your school and your life. Wish you a very pleasant rest of your evening with your family, and
thank you.
Hope that we can talk again soon sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thanks for the chat. Talk to you soon.
Stefan was a pleasure to chat with. I really hope to get out to his place in Panglao in the not too distant future, and I suggest you do the same too. What did you think of the show? Let me know. Add me on Facebook. My name is Donny Mac, DonnyMac. I'm on Instagram as Donny McFar, DonnyMcFar, and I'm here to answer questions and listen to your suggestions for how to make the show better. Remember to subscribe to the show through your favorite podcast provider so you don't miss an episode, and share the Freedive Cafe with your friends. Until next time, dive safe.